Hello and welcome to Women in Workforce. I'm Carrie Rosengana and I'm the CEO of Capital Area Michigan Works. I'll be your host as we bring together women in positions of leadership to shine a spotlight on the workforce impacts that they make, while also discussing and addressing the disparities and challenges that are unique to women in the workforce.
And I'm Kate Snyder. I'm the CEO and founder at Piper & Gold Public Relations, and I get to join Carrie as co-host each episode. And we are both so excited to be back hosting for season 2, to have this discussion and to be able to share, kind of these experiences that are unique to women in the workforce and the disparities that we face professionally.
So every episode, we bring together a roundtable style discussion with our fellow community leaders. And today we're gathered at Risky Studios in East Lansing, and we're really grateful that you've chosen to be with us and to listen in today.
So when a group of female leaders get together, our introductions alone could fill a whole episode because we have to bust tails so hard just to keep up. So that's why we want you to introduce yourselves by summing up your bio in one sentence.
But more importantly, the goal of this is to really help to normalize being human as leaders. So we're really asking you to also think about going behind your bios. Tell us what you want people to know about you, or understand that they maybe couldn't read just looking at your bio on paper.
So while y'all are thinking about that, let me introduce one of our guests for today. So I am super excited to introduce you to Tamera Carter. She's a member at large representing me on the Lansing City Council.
Yes.
Other people too, presumably.
Me as
But
well.
Yes.
and we first got to know each other through our board service together with Impression 5 Science Center. Amazing human, amazing advocate for Lansing, and so excited to have you be here.
Thank
So, Tamera, it's your turn for a one-sentence bio and what we don't see behind that bio.
Okay. I would have to say my one sentence bio that would describe me and what I do is, I would say I am an advocate for the people, not just any people, but really a focus on our underserved community. So I am a true wear my heart on my sleeve type of gal. I am vocal when necessary, but I am an advocate for our community. That would be my one sentence.
And what don't we see behind that bio?
Behind that bio is someone who works her tail off. I don't always have to be the most vocal or the most loudest person in the room, but I am an observer. I like to ask questions and then I like to listen. I like to receive all of the information that is being shared with me so that I can make a good decision on how we move forward.
I love it too. Some of the things you said about wearing your heart on your sleeve
Yes.
deeply resonated with me as a
Yes.
person as well.
Yes.
What's your one-sentence bio, Carrie?
My one-sentence bio? I would say that my purpose in life is to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
That is, at the end of the day, what I believe in and is most important, whether that is helping the customers that I serve every single day in my professional role, or whether that's helping support my little daughter who is 10 and my husband who is a veteran. And so for me, I think that service is at the heart of everything that I do.
Absolutely.
How about you, Kate?
So I would say that the more therapy I do in life, the more I realize that
That's it.
Yes, definitely working on my core values. So I'm like neurodivergent AF. And that means that it took me many, many, many decades of life to try to figure out what was like really me versus what was me mirroring and masking to the people around me. And one of the things I've been realizing recently is that I am very much a protector. Like that is my That is one of the key things for me.
Yeah.
So whether that is protecting communities, whether that's protecting people who are historically oppressed, excluded, or, discriminated against, that whether it's protecting the people I care about, that role of like protection, and protecting myself and others is really important to me. And behind that bio, gosh, I don't even know. It's all just like surface level stuff, honestly, because the protection kind of goes all the way through my like life. I was just telling someone a young professional I was mentoring, that like I used to think about, I haven't done enough by this age, or I haven't accomplished enough, or like whatever. And now I see it as like a point of pride to be able to say, like, I lead a little life and I like it. Like, I like my condensed life. I don't want it to be bigger. Actually, I'm resisting actively against making it bigger. So I think that's kind of my behind the bio, is that like you see people and think like, oh, they have to be like always wanting more in the next. And nope, I'm good. Like, I want to build Lego sets and I want to watch TV, and
that's it.
And
that's
okay.
kind of
And
it.
that is
Like,
okay.
be a good person
And still impactful.
and still impactful.
Then
like,
that's fine.
Yep. Micro impacts are just as important as macro impacts.
Absolutely.
So
Love that.
So to round out our bios, I'm really grateful to be able to introduce you to Kara, who is a representative for the 74th District State Michigan House of Representatives. And I also have to mention, too, that Kara served for many, many years, 6 years, as an Ingham County Commissioner. And while she was doing that, she served on our administrative board at Capital Area Michigan Works. So I knew her before she was someone in a representative role, and I have admired you deeply since I first started working with you and saw the things that you really deeply believed in. I also know that you're an attorney by trade, so those titles that we mentioned, you have some really dynamic leadership and titles that I think are important to highlight. But what would you say if we asked you to sum up your one sentence bio and what's behind the bio?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be very on theme, I think, when I say that I am a public servant. Service is at the heart of what I do, and I have an intolerance for injustice.
yes.
That.
Oh my gosh, I want to tattoo that on my body.
A snap right there.
That
for
is
you.
the best way of saying it I have ever heard.
It's entirely possible I lifted that from somewhere, but I'm not conscious of it right now. So.
We'll amplify.
If you did lift it, it's worth repeating and
Let us know in the
further.
comments.
Yes, yes, love that.
And then behind the bio, I guess, I'm very introverted. And I don't know if that's always obvious to people. I think sometimes it is. I'm kind of just embracing it now at this age of 50. It's part of who I am, and it makes me a good listener. You were talking about being a good listener. It makes me a good listener. It makes me able to put myself in other people's shoes, I think, and empathize and respond in that way.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that empathy in both of you and the way that you have an ability to listen is what makes you such a crucial partner in the work that you do here in our communities and why you're making such a difference. Thank you for being with us today. We're really lucky to have you here today.
Yes. All right. So are we ready for our next segment?
All right.
The question.
All right.
So we've got 5 big questions that are kind of focused on career paths, workforce development, and more. But we also know that there's 0% chance that we would ever get through more than one question in the time that we have, which is why we have the vase of knowledge.
All right.
And so I am going to pull one question out of the vase of knowledge for us to discuss today. And that question is, oh, snap. Oh gosh, me and the mic. Sorry, microphone. Okay. Get ready. Our question is, how would you challenge other people to drive gender equity in the workforce? How would you challenge other people to drive gender equity in the workforce. So,
Well, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's no one size fit all. Um, just from my perspective, it really takes being transparent. It really takes courage, and really tapping into the why. And I say that all because, again, it's not a one size fit all, but it also is, it can be fearful when you don't know if you have those who are allies who would accept you if you do challenge their knowledge or their perspective. It becomes where maybe are you operating in your own being. And so one of the things that I would say is to get past that as much as you can through counseling, through self talk, through mentorship. But I really would say how can be so many different facets. But one thing that I do is I do a lot of research. I also will engage and ask those uncomfortable questions. So a lot of individuals, I also am an introvert, which a lot of people don't feel and don't see, but ask my parents, they'll tell you. But it's asking those uncomfortable questions. It's sitting in that space where you may be the only individual that feels this way, or you may not, but asking those uncomfortable questions and saying, I challenge you to think something differently or think broader, or I charge you with this assignment. And then let's come back to the table to see if that's something that you still stand on. And I think it's important to really tap into those areas where we're not equal. Unfortunately, I mean, we've came some way over the past few decades, but it's still a gap. There is still a gap, and it's important to recognize that and understand it. Operate boldly, more so with fear, and have those uncomfortable questions asked. And so that's one of the things that I do challenge the groups that in settings that I'm in, whether it's on the dais or whether it's at a neighborhood meeting or if it's one on one. Let's start thinking about the why. Why are we feeling this way? Is it past traumas? Is it something that you've experienced in the past? Is it something that you just think, okay, I'm going to side with everyone else? But let's start challenging that why and asking that why, I think is important in a roundabout way. But yes, I would say that is something that I look to do in my position and what I challenge others to do as well.
I think that why is really critical
Mm-hmm.
for why we're doing the work.
Yes.
That resonated with me, like you both. I am very much an introvert by trade. And I think pushing myself, and you as well, Kate, I know, pushing myself, if I have an opportunity that maybe other people aren't in the room who would normally ask those
Exactly.
questions, there's some ownership and raising that up and making sure that we're vocal about it in an atmosphere where we have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
I always like, one of the things I struggle with a lot is, am I doing it right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I advocating for gender equity, quote unquote, right? Without causing more harm, but also in a way that is bold and unapologetic and that isn't perpetuating stereotypes and unpopular opinion, but it could also in part be, like, generational in the fact that I started in the workforce, back full time in 2000, so it was a very different workforce back then. But I often try to read the room. And that's something I would challenge folks to do. Like, read that room, and as I said, the micro change can be as important as the macro change. So in some rooms, hearing a woman speak up and say, I'm sorry, but like, Carol wasn't done speaking and I'd really like to hear the rest of what she said.
Absolutely.
Can we loop back around to that, Kara?
Yes.
Like, is very important and powerful. In other settings, it's going to like cause a fervor in a way that is actually going to detract from what you have to say, potentially lose my access to that space. And so when reading the room, like, how can you still affect change? And one of the things I do a lot is, quietly have those follow-up conversations afterward, right? There are a lot of fragile egos.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
So true.
but if you go afterward, when it's
Mhm.
just the two of you, and say, like,
Right.
hey,
Mm.
I want to say something uncomfortable,
Yes.
but I also, like, I want to believe the best of you,
Mhm.
and that this is a matter of conditioning, implicit bias,
Yes.
something you don't maybe realize it comes across as really disrespectful or as perpetuating gender stereotypes.
Mhm.
Here's the situation. And no one sees that, right?
Yeah.
But if you can make that one change, that can help too. So
Mhm.
that, like, reading of the room is like, I
Yes.
often feel very self-conscious of, like, should I always let everyone see it? But in the long game, we are still at a point with gender equity
Absolutely.
where there are people that won't absorb it, won't actually learn or change if they're embarrassed or if they feel like they were made to look,
Called out.
discriminatory
Yeah.
or
Called out,
silly or
Mhm.
whatever. So
But Kate, even in your example, it's the delivery.
it is. The
It's,
delivery
do
is
you do it in a
everything.
full setting? Do you pull them off to the side? You set the tone when you preface it with something. You fill that gap. So the delivery matters
The
for sure.
delivery matters. Yeah, and I think owning that delivery too. I've done a lot of
Mhm.
study of, like, what, obviously, as a public relations practitioner, what will psychologically work.
Yeah.
And if I make it about me and not about them, right? They're
Mhm.
like, oh, actually, I would like to hear the rest
Yes.
of what. Kara, do you mind? Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, so
Mhm.
and so. I had some more questions. Kara, would you mind finishing what you were saying?
Right.
Kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
you do have to play that.
Mhm.
It sucks, but that game of manipulation a little bit to be able to slowly but surely drag us toward that gender equity.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Kara, when you hear that question? Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
I think I'm old.
Yeah.
When one of my first jobs as a lawyer, I can remember early on, we had a meeting in the boardroom, and there were 20 plus lawyers in there, and most of them were old white men.
Mhm.
In fact, I was definitely the youngest person in there, and one of few females. And it was a breakfast meeting, so we had coffee and donuts or whatever. And when the meeting was over, the women stood up and start clearing dishes.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Because
And I'm
that's
like,
what's expected.
I it was quite a moment of like internal conflict. Like,
Mhm.
I'm new here, so I don't want to be a jerk this early on, but I also don't want to clean up after people
Exactly.
because that's not my job.
Mhm.
I'm a lawyer. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I worked really hard to become a lawyer, and
Absolutely.
hats off to people in the service industry, but that's not what I'm doing here.
Mhm.
So I was really conflicted, but one thing about me is I don't know if this goes with being an introvert or not, but I'm just not afraid to kind of stick out a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I want to draw attention to myself, but I'm not afraid to do something different than what other people are doing.
Mhm.
So I picked up my own dishes. That's it.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
But, it's different now, and I kind of like what you were saying about picking the right moment, picking the
Mhm.
right line of attack, so to speak. Um, that's something that I think is a good thing about being older. You kind of learn that with experience a little bit. Um, I've had to call people out, and like I try to do it in as respectful a way as I can manage in the circumstance.
Of course.
Like someone calls me a name or something, and that doesn't often happen. But if someone did, I would respond like not in kind by calling them a name, but be like, "Wait a
Yeah.
minute,"
Mhm.
Whereas more subtle or more surreptitious instances of maybe some gender bias,
Uh-huh.
call them out personally, not publicly, and say, hey, I know what you're doing. I know
Yeah.
what you're doing,
Yeah.
and I don't like it.
No.
So you better stop.
I think there's a place for rage too. And I think that's part of, like, in challenging other people, find your comfort zone, right? Like, because there is that place for unapologetic rage,
Yeah.
right? There's that place for the person that will just, like, tolerate zero bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
call it exactly like they see it in the moment,
Yeah.
and, your feelings be damned.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you're a grown up, deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there is every now and again that spills out for me too, but also that's not a super I don't know, that's not like naturally where my brain goes, so it's
Right.
not where I go.
Mm-hmm.
But I also love that aspect. Like, if that's you, then, like, what's my challenge for gender equity? You do you.
Yeah.
Have at. And I
Mhm.
will
Yeah.
gladly,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I guess what can you challenge people to do?
Mhm.
Protect that person.
Oh, yeah.
When that person does choose to go out on the ledge in the way that there will be consequences, protect them. Protect the fuck out
Yes.
of them. Make sure they get invited the next time.
Mhm.
If you don't see them on that calendar invite, friggin' at them.
Yeah.
If you don't see them invited again, ask why. Is it because they actually spoke up last time?
Yeah.
That was not inappropriate. What they said was a very valid point, and you don't get to police how they choose to say
Exactly.
it. So even if you're not comfortable
Mhm.
being that person in the room, protect the person that is their way of expressing themselves, and ensure that they don't face the stereotype based consequences, or the
Yeah.
consequences that have prevented people from doing that for so long.
And I think it's okay. I think as women, we need to understand that it's okay to have levels. There's
Mhm.
levels to us,
There sure are.
and it's okay. And I think, to even your point, it's okay that you said I'm old. I think it's wisdom, because as a younger leader, I didn't think I had that voice. I didn't think I could say or do certain things, be that snapper, or be that more vocal person, or just to say I'm not going to pour into that stereotype. Was afraid. It goes back to having that fear.
Mhm.
And because there's layers to us as women, we can be authentic in every single way,
Mhm.
And so now, as I'm coming up in age, I am feeling more comfortable in that realm. And I think that's through just learning lessons, having a great mentor, multiple mentors. But I do think it's important to know and showcase to even those younger women that it's okay that we have so many different ways of approaching those situations when it comes to our gender differences.
I think that next generation piece is important
Mhm.
too, because you never know who's watching you in a room to see what you're
Exactly.
saying and how
Yeah.
you're engaging. I watched you when you were
Mhm.
on my board and I wasn't in a leadership position quite yet. And I knew, like, there are things that you pick up along the way as you see the way that other women are conducting themselves
Mhm.
and that show you it's okay to be the one asking questions.
Yes.
It's okay to push back
Mhm.
if there's something that maybe you don't agree with that's happening. It's okay to be the one who's asking those questions of other people in the room when you may be the minority.
Yeah.
And so for me now, I'm in my mid 40s now. I operate a little differently than I did in my 20s in my career. And I think it's important for us to show the next generation of women that we're working alongside or that we're mentoring. Let's talk about how you can do that. Here are some dynamics, here are some tricks, here are some tools. And teaching them it's okay to be who you are and to ask things, just like
Absolutely.
your male
Mhm.
counterparts would.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And I think letting them see that layers component, the different ways
Yeah.
of doing it. I am very, for as much as people think that I'm very outspoken, or, I don't know, other words, blunt, truly much of my impact and the ways in which I help build support for the things I'm advocating on behalf of is quiet. It's, people don't see it. And one thing I've learned is how important it is to tell my team and help them understand how it goes from this person was railing against this in a meeting to now, like, they seem supportive and they're on board. Like, how did that happen? Because traditionally that's not something I've talked about, but to let them like know and see, hey, this is what a slightly different way of helping to affect change may be. And kind of reporting back and helping them see like the value of that, but also that that is a part of my job. It's so hard to quantify PR as a value. Like, what is the value of PR? Well, if I knew that, I'd be a millionaire and all the agencies would hire me to tell them. But that is one of the very, I think, important, valuable things that I do in my career. And up until recently, nobody really knows because I was like, one day I was just kind of like, oh crap, I should probably like tell people that I'm doing this or tell others so they understand how did we get here or how can I employ some of these techniques.
Yeah, that's
good. All right.
I think that's a good time to change us
Switcheroony.
to our next segment.
It's go time.
Okay, so have you ever heard the phrase, look at the facts and not feelings in leadership or in therapy for those of us who have done therapy?
Therapist says it all the
That's
time.
right.
Yeah. Kate, what are the facts?
Yeah.
So
the facts, not feelings.
Right, but this time we want to talk about facts and feelings. So we're going to share some related data points. I know you said you like research, and I know you do too, Kara. And so that will be a good one to read you some research-based data. And we want to ask you to share how that makes you feel. So facts and feelings. You ready?
Facts and feelings.
Okay. The first fact. We all know the gender gap is real and complicated. You can look at dozens of different versions of the statistics that measure it. So here's just one. In 2022, women earned 82.5% of the average male salary in Michigan, which was an increase from 76.2% in 2021, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics Women's Earning in Michigan. Though Michigan's gender gap is slowly closing, if current trends continue, women in Michigan will not see equal pay until 2084. Here's what we want to talk about. If employed women in Michigan were paid the same as their comparable men in those positions, their poverty rate would be reduced by nearly half, and the poverty among employed single mothers would drop by more than half. And this is according to the status of women data, status of women in the states. So, hearing those things, those facts, what are your immediate reactions?
Oh gosh.
Do you have any immediate reactions?
It's disheartening. When you said 2084, I took a deep breath, like, oh wow.
Like I'm mathing to figure out.
Yeah, like I'm
will
like,
I
man,
be here in
I
2084?
probably won't be here.
Like, how old will I be in
to officially
2084?
see equal pay. And I think just that's the first thing that comes to mind. It's like, wow, and why? How is this moving so slowly and we're doing the work? And you spoke on poverty and how it would reduce, but not just poverty, burnout. So we're doing all of this work at fast pace just to be close to our male counterparts, but we're having an increase in reduction or in poverty. And by this time, it will be reduced, but the poverty, the burnout, the stress, the mental health, like so. I think when you say years from now, it's very disheartening to see that we are in this society where we are not allowed and given the opportunity to make that equal pay.
I think it's a lot of it maybe like the motherhood penalty.
Oh, that's good.
We still get kind of locked into those traditional gender roles, and I don't have children of my own, but I raise children, so I
Mhm.
kind of have a different perspective on that. My niece and nephew came to live with me when they were 8 and 3 years old, and I had been married for like 4 months.
Oh,
My
hey
Wow.
now.
Wow.
my husband's a saint,
Yeah.
yes. Um, so at that time, I was kind of at a transition point in my career, and I really felt like I needed to be there for the little guy, especially because he was behind and he needed some extra TLC and attention. And so I was fortunate I could do that and then teach part time at Cooley Law School. Um, but that was not the money move, like that
Mhm.
was not the career trajectory move. That was me making a personal decision that I was privileged to be able to make. Um, and mothers do that every day. They do that every day.
Every day.
Like I have to leave at 3:30 to go pick up my kid, like, and everybody else is still there. Um, and you're the one who's taking off, or someone gets sick at school and you got to take off, and it's especially depending on your work culture. I think maybe in a more female oriented workplace or just a more progressive workplace that wouldn't maybe be a thing, but I think it still is a lot of
Oh,
times,
yeah.
Yeah.
and it's held against women who are doing everything for everyone.
Our cape never comes off.
No, it never does.
Yeah.
I wish it did
I know.
sometimes.
I
Yeah.
know. We
Girl.
have to force ourselves to take it off
uh,
because we deserve that self-care moment.
But it's
Yeah.
hard to do that,
It is
right?
very hard to do.
When we were all talking about like being secret introverts or whatever,
Secret
I
introverts
like
or
that.
not so
this
secret.
I'm glad I could facilitate that, by the
Yes,
way.
we're
thank
Yes,
really
you.
yes,
glad for
yes.
that. Thank you.
This notion was like popping up in my head, and I was like, where do I bring this up? Because I feel like this is important, and right here feels like the right place is the number of women that have sat on this couch
Mhm.
and said, like, you might not expect this, but I'm an introvert. Or
Mhm.
like, you may not see it in my daily life, but
Mhm.
really I'm an introvert. And I just wonder, are so many women actually introverts? Or during work and, you know, shepherding kids around physically in vehicles and teaching them how to be humans and emotionally catering to their needs while inside of those vehicles for your daily kid therapy, how to be a grown-up someday sessions, and
Yeah.
like, are we all actually introverts, or are we just so fucking tired? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
so over people and the facade and the representing of all women that fall into all of the categories that we represent, whether that's racial, whether that's sexual orientation, whether that is, immigrant and refugee status, first generation, whether that is the Elle Woods effect, like whatever it happens to be, that you're representing all of these different things, that by the time you actually finish for the day,
At 10 o'clock at night.
you
Or
like
later.
Earlier.
Yeah.
what we wish for is introversion,
Mm.
because like we are just so done
Mhm.
that to be quiet and alone and comfortable is all we really want. Like to be able to let all that
Uh-huh.
down.
Mhm.
And introversion is kind of the only way we get to.
I do think, Kara, that there is truth in what you said about the motherhood tax or penalty
Mhm.
or whatever you want to call it. So many women do leave the workforce and if they have the opportunity, choose to stay home with their family. But then when they come back to the workforce, what are the wages that they're coming in? Do they
Right.
just feel like I have to take what I can get because I've been out of the workforce for a couple of years? I
Right.
think
Mhm.
sometimes we don't we do not do a good enough job of seeing our own self-worth.
Mhm.
And certainly there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that have institutionally caused for these wage disparities. But I also think sometimes, that is a factor that has to play into it sometimes. I want to get back to work, but I know I've been out for a while. Well, damn it, you're still just as skilled
Mhm.
and just as knowledgeable and just as valuable
Yeah.
as you were the day that you left.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, I've seen that certainly.
Mhm.
For the vast majority of, careers, taking a pause doesn't diminish your skill level.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
you're,
Or
sure,
experience.
maybe in
Or your
some
Mhm.
specific, highly technical,
Software.
like,
Yeah.
Professional
okay.
athlete.
That's
Well,
right.
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Teensy tiny
Yeah.
little,
Mhm.
but
Overarchingly.
for the
Right.
Yeah.
most,
Mhm.
right? Like, it's not like there's that stereotype, like, oh, well, they've been out of the workforce or part-time, or like, we don't get dumber,
Yeah.
y'all. Like,
Right.
we didn't get stupider.
Mhm.
And for the vast
Mhm.
majority of careers, your brain
Yeah.
is what you use at work.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So yeah, that penalty, but then also we had some really interesting stats last season about negotiation, and that women do negotiate at the same rates that men do, but we get turned down more frequently.
Yes.
And then we feel, well, I have
Mhm.
to take it. My
Mhm.
options are limited.
Yeah.
I'm not as competitive of a candidate as someone that's been in the workforce this whole time. And
So we settle.
so we settle
Mhm.
Mhm.
because we don't feel, not just because we don't feel we have the power, we
Mhm.
don't have the power. If they tell
Mhm.
you no and you need to pay your bills,
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
what you gonna do? Keep saying no for 3 years
Mhm.
until someone finally offers you a job at the
Yeah.
same rate?
Mhm.
At a certain point, it becomes a matter of survival, and ugh, disparity because of survival. That's
And that's when it goes
it.
back to making challenging that status quo, challenging, asking those uncomfortable questions. Okay, so what are you looking for in a candidate? Okay, I do this, and let me tell you how I do it. Oh, I can knock that out. Let me show you my projections from a year ago. I think
Mhm.
it's important that we call, like I like to say, call a spade, and say, all right, that's what you want in a candidate. That's what I can bring you,
That's
and
me.
then some.
Mhm.
So what is the problem now?
Yeah. And even things
Yeah,
like
yeah,
salary requirements,
yeah.
right? Like what, put your salary requirements.
Mhm.
And I've been guilty of putting up job postings that
Yeah.
ask people to put in their salary requirements.
Mhm.
How about instead of salary requirements, we start to say, like, oh, well, my salary requirement would be commensurate with other professionals that you have
Mhm.
in positions with, XYZ years of experience.
Yeah,
Right. Exactly.
That's
absolutely.
my salary requirement.
Mhm.
What do
Mhm.
the 3 other people in this
Mhm.
make? Who's got comparable experience to me?
Yeah.
That's what I would like, please.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm more experienced than all of them? I would like more than all of
That's
them.
another bump.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or
Mhm.
what is your salary range?
Mhm.
If you want it
Yeah.
to be equitable as employers, we have to start looking at like range based,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so we can take that implicit bias away.
Mhm.
But yeah, like salary requirement. Oh, my salary requirement is commensurate with others in this position that have comparable
Mhm.
experience to me.
Yeah.
I do think, though, some of those institutional underlying things that are enacted, 2084. I
Yeah.
think
No,
about that with
just
my
no.
daughter, and I'm like, so she's going to be going to work and she's still not going to get
Yes.
paid as much as somebody just because of gender? Like, that just makes my stomach hurt and makes
Yeah.
my heart hurt. And I do think, there's some ownership too. We need to keep educating people about these are the facts.
Yeah.
These are the numbers. This is where we're at. And if we don't talk about it, I feel like it's going to be 2094 before,
Yeah.
it's just going to keep going if we don't try to take action with what we can control, but also looking larger picture too, where we can have impact.
Yeah, systemic change is
Yeah.
essential in situations like
Absolutely.
this. We can't expect it to be upon the individual
Mhm.
companies and organizations. Like, these are systemic issues, and to make it sooner than 2084, there has to be systemic level
Mhm.
change.
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
hopeful that men will learn how to work with women.
Mm.
Like, we're not all just, you know, how can I say it? Okay, so I'll go back. I'll be the old person again. Um,
Experience,
Yes,
yeah, okay,
Tara.
wisdom.
experienced. I think the expectation when I was first coming into the workplace was that you hold yourself to the same standard as your male counterpart appears to be holding himself to. So if he's there at 7 a.m., you're there at 7 a.m. If he's there at 7 p.m., you're still there at 7 p.m. And there was no real appreciation, I guess, of how our lives might be different because we're different genders.
Hmm.
I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is men are still kind of bullies in the workplace, and it's still, to me, it still feels like it's the default is male. Like, this is a male thing, this is a man's world, whatever. And we're still trying to fit in instead of them meeting us halfway.
Do you think your perception of that is amplified because of holding a legislative role where I would say that is like the epitome of where we see the culture extremes in our society?
Absolutely. And, if you look at the legislature right now, it's disproportionately male. Our I'll just give a little political plug here for my fellow Democrats. We are a much more diverse caucus,
Yeah,
and
that's true.
we I think we're a little better at treating each other equitably. But going into the majority at the beginning of January 23 was a real eye-opening experience for me
I bet.
in a lot of ways, but gender too. Like,
Hmm.
I had like conservative males talking to me in a way, and like, no, no,
Mhm.
you cannot talk to me like
No.
that. I don't know who you think you're talking to,
Yeah.
but I'm chair of this committee, and you're not going to talk to me like that.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That takes inner strength though, Kara, to,
Yes.
which we shouldn't have to be
mhm,
strong to speak up and
Mhm.
say when that's wrong and call it out. But I mean, I think you being willing to do that and to say, no, I'm not going to accept that
mhm,
Yeah,
behavior. We all have to do that when we see it happening,
Mhm.
right?
absolutely.
mhm,
Absolutely.
And we have to also be willing to listen. I have the privilege of living in a wee bit of a bubble in terms of, working in the private sector. The clients that we generally work with are, those that are very social justice minded, equity minded. And yet we all still have our own biases, our own, you know, uh, ignorances. And the thing that's nice about, working within these arenas where there is, I would say, certainly there's less overt sexism. There's still
mhm,
much, much, much larger issues of systemic racial oppression, gender oppression, sexual orientation oppression, and all those things. But it's not as overt, but also it is more accepted and people are more willing to listen when like there is that little microaggression and you're like, oh, well,
mhm.
Mhm.
we're just not gonna say that one anymore.
I want to be in the meeting where you're making
Right.
all those
Right.
Oh
noises.
yeah,
Yeah.
I do it aloud.
Yeah.
I'll just be like, oh,
Yeah.
and they're
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, right, my bad, sorry, not gonna say that, or even just like someone will say something and you can reply with like, that may be your
Mhm.
experience, and they're like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, right, okay.
Yeah.
And there's that willingness to listen and think about it, and gosh, it is so hard to tamp down embarrassment,
Yeah.
shame,
Mhm.
guilt, defensiveness
Yeah.
when someone does you the
Oh,
courtesy
that's so
of
true.
pointing out something that you can improve and just like, oh,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah.
Noted.
That's it.
Mhm.
A simple
Noted.
thank you.
You don't have
Yeah.
to go all
Mhm.
white savior, make it
Mhm.
like, oh my
Yeah.
God, either, right? Like
Mhm.
just thank you.
That's
Genuinely.
that's so true.
Noted.
Yeah, because I've been in those type of positions where people got defensive, and it was because I spoke up. I said, "Wait, that's not how we're going to go in that direction. We're not doing that." And then be called aggressive
Mm,
or
Always.
Yeah.
combative.
Yeah.
Always.
And I'm like, me speaking up for what's right is not combative. It's not aggressive.
mhm,
It's actually trying to put respect in this space. And then you
Absolutely.
have the receiver who becomes defensive. So why? So then it's like, okay, why are you becoming defensive? If we're in an inclusive setting, my voice matters just as much as yours. And to just say noted or
Noted.
thank you for that perception or
Yeah.
that for your perception of what's going on
Right.
should be fine. It should be
Yep.
It should
suffice.
be.
It should be.
Yeah.
And those are those barriers that we need to break down and be okay with breaking down and calling it out.
Yeah.
It's not because we're combative. It's not because we're aggressive. It's because we're acting in boldness and as we should, because my voice matters just as much as the next.
Mm-hmm. And learning to say, I need to think about that.
Yes.
I need to, instead of like any
Yes.
moment you get that like, uh-oh,
Mhm.
to defend, like take a breath.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Mhm.
Or
Yep.
I'm caught off guard.
Yeah.
I'm feeling defensive. I'm going to take a breath and
Yes.
reflect on that.
Mhm.
Like we could give a whole fact sheet or a whole list of responses
Yes.
for when you might almost be a complete
Right,
a-hole in a
right.
meeting.
Right. Absolutely.
Here's your list of 30 things you could say
Yeah.
other than but.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So, okay, guess what?
What's that?
It's wrap up time, y'all.
Oh,
Can you
wow.
believe it?
Wow.
It's past wrap up time, actually. I just ignored the timer. I do every episode.
You.
So, which leads in well, like, because I could listen to y'all talk for hours, and I could sit here and chat with you for hours, but we do have to wrap up for
Mhm.
today. But I really hope conversation won't end here. I want you to take a few seconds to think about kind of what your biggest takeaways from today are, and what you hope others will take away, and summarize that in 3 words. Okay. It could be 3 random words, it could be a phrase, but I want you to take a minute and think about 3 words that you hope others will take away or what you're taking away.
And while you work on those 3 words, I want to again just say thank you for you both taking time out of your really busy schedules to sit down with Kate and I, and for being vulnerable and honest and open. And I'm sure that those listening are going to take away so many things. I know that I have today, that's for sure. So I want to thank you, Kara, our 74th District State Representative in the Michigan House of Representatives, and Tamera Carter, member at large on the Lansing City Council. So I'll start just to give you kind of an idea. 3 words for me: your voice matters. That's what I took
Yeah.
from both of you today. Is you got to use your voice when you have the opportunity to speak up, not just for yourself but for others in the room. It's important to do so. So I take that away for you from hearing you both
Love
as
that.
leaders in our community. Kara?
Oh my goodness. I would say conversation and not so much talking
Mhm.
about this conversation, which was excellent, by the way. But to
Yes.
have the conversations at work, I mean, if you have younger women in your workplace or I'll say any gender, anyone,
Absolutely.
talk to them. I
Mhm.
mean, usually it's not coming from a place of malice. And if it is, you can just call them out. Tell them, say, cut it out, fool.
Yeah. Call them out. Call them out.
So conversation, education, I think is kind of part and parcel of that. And then strength. Just
Mm.
stand up for yourself. This is kind of a joke, but kind of not. There's a 1980s movie that features Rodney Dangerfield,
Oh, snap.
and he's giving the commencement address.
Oh, yes.
And he says, "Look out for number 1, but don't step in number 2."
Mm.
And it's funny, but it's also kind of good. It's
Yeah.
kind of good.
Yeah. That's good. That's
You
good.
weren't expecting that, were you?
No, was not expecting a Rodney Dangerfield
Me
drop in
neither.
here.
Right.
Especially in a
Right.
conversation about like women's equity.
Yeah.
And
That would became one.
I can almost guarantee you that the vast majority of Rodney Dangerfield movies do not hold up today.
No, they don't. They're a little uncomfortable. They are, but he's got some good one-liners.
That was a good one.
That's good. Those are good. I would say you mentioned conversation. I was thinking communication. It's important to have those conversations. So communicate. I would also say boldness.
Mhm.
So being bold and being authentic. So
Yeah.
walk in that.
Love it. All right. My 3. I'm not always a very good listener. And so for me, my 3 are thank you, noted.
Ah,
Just to, continue to remind myself that even if my brain is going a mile a minute, it's okay to pause before responding and reacting. Thank you. Noted.
And on that note, I'm Carrie Rosengana. I'm the CEO of Capital Area Michigan Works.
And I'm Kate Snyder. I'm the CEO and oh gosh, botched my own title.
It's okay.
Rewind. I'm Kate Snyder. I'm the CEO and founder of Piper and Gold Public Relations in Lansing. And we can't wait to welcome a new group of guests for more amazing conversation in our Women in Workforce series. Thanks for joining us.